Well, I haven't had to do this in all my years as a Rebel News journalist, but I got something wrong in one of my recent reports and I need to correct it for you. You see, recently I informed you that Audrey Yun, a biological male who identifies as a female, took home a medal in a Best Female Lifter category at the British Columbia Powerlifting Association's Summer Open meet. But what I should have told you is that Yun wasn't the only one. Let's talk about it.
But just on a physical, biological level, there is an advantage. So what do you say to young girls who want to be in this sport, but see something like this and think, I don't have a chance?
Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and what you just saw was a short clip of me questioning Audrey Yun, moments after that individual was crowned Best Female Lifter in the 84 kilogram plus category at the BCPA Summer Open, which recently took place in Port Coquitlam. Despite being a sizable biological male who previously received a 6-month ban for harassing female athletes in strongwoman after winning awards in that sport, Yun was welcomed by the BCPA, which runs under the Canadian Powerlifting Union, to dominate over women once again. And yes, in case you are wondering, the CPU is the same Canadian Powerlifting Union that initially issued a 2-year ban against elite powerlifter April Hutchinson for the crime of standing up for fairness in women's sports by speaking out against the allowance of biological men to compete in them. Speaking of fairness, what those of you who watched that initial report don't know, because I myself didn't know it either at the time, is that Yun wasn't the only biological male to have taken the podium and championed over female competitors during the Summer Open that day. No, Stacey Bating did as well. You see, after I published that Yun had beat out the women in a strength sport competition yet again, I was tipped off by concerned sources that Bating, who also took the podium at that meet and was crowned second place in the female 69 kilogram category, also identifies as a trans woman. Yes, you've got that right. The BCPA and CPU has allowed at least 2 biological males to be winners in female powerlifting competitions at the same time. I suppose in a day and age where even the Olympics' lackadaisical standards allow for not 1, but 2 genetically male athletes to take home gold in women's boxing after annihilating their next best and female competitors 5 points to 0, we shouldn't be too surprised. I reached out to BC powerlifter Laura Allen, who's also had to compete against Audrey Yun in the past. Allen is not just a role model for women and girls who are inspired by strength sports. She's also served our country well by paving the way for women in the Canadian Armed Forces. Here's her reaction to learning about this BCPA revelation.
I didn't think it was surprising at all. I believe that as more time passes, it's going to be more and more normal to see trans competitors in the women's division. And I also think that with it being celebrated so much by a select group, that it's actually encouraging more people to do it. And it makes me kind of question, like, where is women's sports headed? I've competed against a trans competitor in February of 2023. We competed at the same show in separate divisions. And the way that person had behaved towards women was, it was a bit appalling in my opinion. Very poor sportsman. And, I see sports headed this way. There's no way at this point in time to make any change because there's no real solutions being presented. And so, when we talk about, presenting solutions, it's like the simplest thing would be creating a third category. I'm not a believer that, there's only 2 categories, like there's only men, there's women, because there is a select group of people that, they fall into the middle group where maybe they have transition, or maybe they were, born with both body parts or something. But it's like these people do belong in sports. I just don't believe that place is in the women's division. Creating a third category would allow, trans competitors to compete. It would create more fairness for women. It's a viable solution. It creates safety for, women. That way too, women who decided maybe they might want to compete in a third division, because I don't think that a third division should just be only trans competitors. It could be anybody, right? So if you wanted to compete with in the open division with trans because you support the trans, you should be allowed to. And then, it would create a little bit more transparency for women who might not want to compete against a male. As a meet director and as an athlete, and knowing a lot of people in the strength community from over the years, I've actually spoken to quite a few people on their different opinions. I'm open to all types of opinions. I know people, on both sides, and I want to be supportive of everybody. But I will say that I've had quite a few people reach out to me specifically after this BCPA meet last weekend that were, some of them were spotting and loading. They were volunteering. A couple people were, helping their friends or, viewing in the audience, even one or two competitors. And the general consensus is that people don't believe that trans have a place in women's sports, but they're too worried about what people might say to speak out about it. It seems to be a general consensus by people, but unfortunately, it doesn't sound like the federation itself is taking into consideration the general consensus. They're taking into consideration the consensus of a few. And I do believe that those people are a minority.
Now, after taking some time to confirm the lead I got about Beting's biology, I reached out to Beting. And to make it clear, unlike with Audrey Yun, who taunts women with the thought of pissing beside them, I could find no examples of Beting being at all hostile or rude with female competitors. But still, I wanted to know Beting's thoughts on the opinions of female competitors and the portion of the general public who believe it's absurd, unfair, and backpedaling on women's rights to allow biologically advantaged males, no matter how they identify, to compete against women in sports, especially ones as physically demanding as powerlifting. Would Beting be opposed to open categories that offer a more even playing ground? Would Beting have some sort of compelling scientific, reality-based reasons for why that medal deserves to be Beting's? And would the people agree? Unfortunately, I didn't get a response, but I did get blocked by Beting's Instagram, but not TikTok. And according to Beting's TikTok post here, the BC Summer Open was Beting's first meet. So was winning that medal beginner's luck, the product of hard work, or just simple genetics? I reached out to sport performance coach Linda Blade, who is also a former Canadian champion in track and field and who has her doctorate in kinesiology, to weigh in on those questions and to get her claim that biological males, after taking cross-sex hormones for 2.5 years or more, have evened out the playing field when competing against biological women.
I feel like I have spent so much time in sport, and I feel that I need to speak out and correct some of the misinformation out there about trans women or men who identify as women in sport. And it's particularly in powerlifting, the advantage of a male over a female is 50% or more in certain events, and minimally maybe 30% more. But I mean, these guys, if there's a male who identifies as a female and competes in powerlifting, that person has a massive competitive advantage over women in the sport. That person has no reason or justification for being there. And any association that lets that person compete is really undermining women's sports. And it's not fair to the female athletes. So I would say that we need to look at the science and see what it says. When it comes to an athlete, let's say one of these people lifting who's male and is identifying as a woman, if they say, well, I've been on hormones for so long and now it's all equilibrated to the female level, that simply is not true. That's misinformation, because we know that from science studies that if a male person is on lowered testosterone levels for years, it still doesn't make any difference. They are still much stronger than female athletes.
If you believe enough is enough, that women deserve to have their own change rooms, prisons, rape shelters, and sports leagues, join thousands of others in signing our petition at protectfemalespaces.com today. And if you appreciate that, unlike the state-backed media who paints advocacy for female-only spaces as some sort of far-right bigoted conspiracy theory, that Rebel News has been covering this important issue for years, please consider donating what you can to help us cover the costs of such reports while you're there. Again, that's protectfemalespaces.com.